Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Vibha Hetu. I'm an assistant professor at OP Jindal Global University. I'm also an assistant director for the Center for Victimology and Psychological Studies. I'm going to speak on a module, Victim Precipitation, Role of Victim in a Crime. The learning outcome for this module is to make the learners understand the role of victim in a crime and empirical data to grasp its seriousness, to acquaint the learners with the crimes which is victim precipitated and its implications and outcome, to also make the learners understand that attitude of some victims define their unconscious aptitude for being victimized and its role in further consequences, to make the learners understand the role of victim and the offender are interchangeable. Now I'm going to talk about the introduction. How did victim precipitation was introduced in victimology? Hans von Henting and Mendelssohn, they have concentrated on the degree to which the victim could be considered responsible for his or her own victimization. Benjamin Mendelssohn have spoken about the penal couple, whereas Hans von Henting has spoken about the role of a victim in crime referred as doer-sufferer relationship. When it comes to a doer-sufferer relationship, the one who commits a crime is known to be the one is the doer, and the one who has suffered the crime is known to be a sufferer. Whereas Mendelssohn has spoken about penal couple. Penal couple means that there are, according to criminal justice system, there is one who has committed a crime is an offender, and the one who has suffered as a result of the consequences of crime is a victim. Both of them, they compete for their interest in the criminal justice system, fighting for a justice and fighting for a just outcome for both the parties. When we talk about what is the role of a victim in a crime, there are different kinds of role of a victim in a crime. For example, victims may incite, provoke or create a situation conducive to the committing of crime. For example, von Henting has discussed the role of a victim in crime in the following sentences. Victims whose injury may be the price of a greater gain. For example, victims who do not want, who has conceived and they don't want to have a baby, then they go for abortion. Victims who bring about detrimental result by their own concurrent effort. For example, prostitutes. Victims who provoke or instigate the offense, example, by challenging the opponents, and in that emotional state of mind, the opponent takes up the challenge and actually attacks the victim. There are victims who also desire the injury. For example, there are victims who become a member of a cult, and as becoming a member of a cult, they are brainwashed and later on they are also harmed. When we talk about, why does the victim, play such a role, there are victims who also have an inherent objective of gaining something from a crime. For example, it can be money, it can be property, or it can be anything else. So there is also an example where a wife who actually did not was seeking a divorce from a husband, but she let while the divorce was pending in the court of law, and whenever the husband visited the child, she often encouraged the husband to come over and sleep at night in their home. And when the whole money was actually used by the victim, then she actually fended off the offender. So in this case, one day the husband decided to actually kill the victim, and the victim was as a result killed. So it talks about that a wife, she would not have persisted her husband to visit their children very often, it is sure that a husband might not have gone to the extent of killing. Mendelssohn also created a typology of 6 types of victims. Only the first one is the innocent victims who did not have any role in the commission of crime. For example, there are people who are present at a wrong place at a wrong time. For example, children who are sexually abused, and there are people who meet with a road accident without having any contribution in the crime. Such victims could not have averted the offense by anticipating it or by preventing it, because they were not aware that they are going to be victimized. Rape or murder victims also, when the crime is unforeseen, unprovoked, and perpetrated by complete strangers. So they are completely innocent victims. Victims with minor guilt. This category includes victims who, with some thought, planning, awareness, information, or consciousness, could have expected danger and avoided or minimized the harm to themselves. They could or should have known better. For example, adult victims of repeated domestic violence, where shelters are available after patterns are established and it is no longer unpredictable. Even marital rape victims, after the first few episodes, when the pattern has been established and it is no longer a surprise, they can definitely seek refuge to NGO or shelter homes. Women who are raped after choosing to get drunk, and the minor responsibility is for electing to be completely helpless and unconscious at the full mercy of others, and others who take advantage of such victims. Then some victims, who are present with youngsters, who associate with youngsters, they are also likely to be victimized as a result of that. Victims who share equal responsibility with the perpetrators. This category includes victims who share equal responsibility with the offender for the harm inflicted on them. These are people who are conscious and aware of the situation and still choose to be a part of it. They are not caught by surprise, and common sense could have anticipated the damage that occurred. Examples: co-alcoholics, co-addicts, after the initial phase of the relationship, after it has been clearly established that the partner is an addict, a man who contracts a sexually transmitted disease from a prostitute, victims who seek, challenge, tease, or entice the perpetrator, willing participants in a chicken game, gun duel, or double suicide. Now, the fourth category is victims who are slightly guiltier than the offender. This category includes victims who are active participants in an interaction where they are likely to get hurt. While they seek the damaging contact, the offender can easily withdraw from the situation. The examples of such a case would be an abusive husband who is killed by his battered wife. He is primarily responsible, but as this paper states, the abuse must be viewed also as an interaction and some responsibility shared between the couple. Drunk people who harass sober bystanders and also get hurt. Cult members who choose to enter the cult as adults and then were brainwashed and harmed. Then comes the fifth category, victims who are exclusively responsible for the victimization. This category includes victims who initiated the contact and committed an act that is likely to lead to injury. In these cases, the one who inflicts the damage is not guilty and acts in pure self-defense or as expected from his position. This category is reserved for legally and clinically sane adults. Example: rapists who are killed by the complete stranger victims in self-defense, or mercenaries who are wounded or killed. Then comes victims who pretend to be victims. For example, they are simulating or pretending victims, such as they pretend as paranoids, hysterical, and senile persons who give evidence in the courts in order to obtain sentence against an accused person. Senile person would be the one who pretend to be a senile person, that they are suffering from the old by virtue of a old age, or who pretends to be suffering, who pretends to be a paranoid, pretending that they are suffering from multi-personality disorder, and those who pretend to be hysterical victims, that means they have wild emotions, they are suffering from wild emotions. Feminist researchers find that women are considerably more likely to be victims of rape by husbands or ex-husbands than strangers. Later studies were also concerned with types of victims and the role of victim in crime in general or in specific crimes. Let's talk about property. There are many victims who are also become a victim of property damage. Those who have been careless, those who have not been taken properly care of the property, those who have been negligent and reckless, and because of that kind of behavior they have been victimized. Victims who have otherwise become a victim of a rape by the known person they have become a victim of a rape for the sole reason that they were well known to the offender. Offender was very well associated with the victim, knew whereabouts of the victim, and took advantage of such victims. So, especially in case of rape, women are mostly known to be raped by the accused, those who are well known to them. Then I am also coming to there are victims, those who act as a provocative, those who instigate the offense by actually challenging the opponent, through active participation. Then I am also going to discuss about what are the Fatah has spoken about 10 schemas, talking about what are those 10 schemas which actually contributes into the role of the victim, and where victim has actually been victimized as a result of that crime. For example, opportunities. Opportunities are linked to the characteristics and activities of potential targets. Second one is risk factors. Socio-demographic characteristics including age, gender, area of residence, or absence of guardianship. Motivated offenders, the criteria by which offenders select their victims. There are offenders who will anyway commit crimes. Exposure to potential offenders and risk situations also enhances the risk of criminal victimization. Associations where people run a great risk of victimization when they actually share a close relationship or professional contact with potential delinquents and criminals. Dangerous times and dangerous places. Times when risks are greater, such as late night hours and weekends, and also places at greater risk, such as sites of public entertainment, such as pubs. Dangerous behavior. Certain behaviors, such as negligence and carelessness, enhances the chances of property victimization, while other behaviors, such as hitchhiking, also may put people in dangerous situations. High risk activities, such as the pursuit of fun, which may include deviant and illegal activities. For example, going out late at night, speeding the car. Defensive and avoidance behavior. There are people who fear crime so much that they prefer to sit at home rather than going out because they fear that outside they will be victimized. Structural and cultural proneness talk about that people who are powerless and deprived are anyway known to become victims of crime by the virtue of their lowly position in the society. Now I am going to discuss about, there are 4 theories which explain the role of the victim in crime occurrence. The first one is victim precipitation theory. Victim precipitation, as I have already spoken, victim precipitation, we talk about the contribution of the victim in the crime. The confrontation that eventually leads to the injury or the death of the victim. Precipitation can be either active or passive. Active precipitation occur whenever the victim first uses physical force against the subsequent slayer. Active precipitation occurs when victims act provocatively, use threats or fighting words, even attacks first. Now, for example, according to Amir, he has spoken about female sexual assault victims. They often contribute to the attacks by dressing provocatively or pursuing a relationship with the offender. Even in domestic violence cases, some abused women may commit suicide, but in the end they also are in extreme cases, they are also likely to kill their abusive partner. Victim precipitated aggravated assault was defined in the National Survey as occurring when the victim was first to use either physical force or insinuating language and gestures against the subsequent attacker. In passive precipitation, this so happens where victim do not actually actively participates in any interaction, but victim actually victim exhibits certain characteristics. By virtue of that certain characteristics, the victim is likely to indirectly, without the knowledge of doing that, the victim is likely to challenge the offender. For example, a victim who actually belongs to a lower caste, okay, and actually starts getting the same kind of reputation which was earlier enjoyed by the higher caste people. So that way the people from a higher caste may conceive it as the person from a lower caste is actually challenging them. Then they are also the people from higher caste likely to commit crimes against the lower caste. Recently, there was a case in which the higher caste people saw people from a lower caste actually celebrating, calling a band for a marriage party and celebrating it exorbitantly. So they got mad at their behavior, that higher caste people actually poured kerosene oil in the well which was actually being used by the lower caste people. There also can be another example where there are two people, both are competing for a promotion, and both are, I mean, both consider themselves to be equally competent to actually get that promotion, but one of them gets a promotion and the other one does not get. So the first one may actually take out his frustration against the other person for getting a promotion. Now I'm also going to talk about what is a lifestyle theory. Lifestyle theory talks about that crime is actually a result of a situational factors. That means if there are certain situations, if victim is able to avoid, then victim may not actually be victimized. And lifestyle model talks about that there are people who purposely put themselves at risk by going out late at night, by associating with young men, by living in an urban area, by getting drunk and interacting with strangers, and also by frequenting the places such as pubs, then places of public entertainment. So such people are likely to be more victimized because of the lifestyle they have adopted. And high risk lifestyle means that they stay alone, they are vulnerable because of their loneliness, they may be a divorcee woman, they may be a single woman, they are educated, they are working, and people are well aware of their vulnerability. They might also be emotionally vulnerable. For example, young runaways are at high risk for victimization. The more time they are exposed to street life, the greater the risk of becoming crime victims. Teenage males have an extremely high victimization risk because their lifestyle places them at risk both at school and once they leave the school. While they are at school, they may also interact with the students, those who are those who love to be a truant at school. For example, they don't go to a school, and outside it all depends whom they interact with. They also might go drinking with some of the teenagers while they might be still small for the drinking age, but they pretend to be that they are adults and they may frequent such places, and they may also get into a brawl with other youngsters. And some youngsters also may encourage them to take drugs, to sell drugs, to earn easy money, and also may teach them such lifestyle as to how to use gun and all that. And slowly they don't really realize, and slowly they start deviating, transgressing from the regular norms of life, and they may even start abusing drugs, get into a gang, become a member of a gang, and are likely to be caught in the web of a crime. Now I'm going to talk about deviant place theory. According to deviant place theory, victim are crime prone because they actually reside in a socially disorganized high crime areas. They have a greater risk of associating with criminal offenders because of the area which is deviant in nature. It has a maximum transient population where residential area along with commercial areas exist side by side. So that way there are many population which comes in for work, stay for a short time, and they are likely to go out. There is also something called, there may be a conflict between the cultures because there are different people who are staying there. There are people, and there are so many people who are poor, they stay there just for the opportunity they keep looking for in order to harm the people, those who are staying there. So, and such establishment provide criminals with easy targets for theft crimes such as shoplifting. Successful people stay out of these stigmatized areas. They are usually from affluent areas where they, if, with little precautions, they keep themselves safe. Whereas it's very different when it comes to a deviant place theory, where you have mentally ill people, even elderly people, children, those who are not well looked after, and because of the same reason they also come into a contact with the people, those who have a criminal bent of mind, and they are likely to become criminals because of that. And they are also not able to protect themselves even though they try harder to be safe than do the more affluent because of the reason that they stay in that area. Now I'm going to talk about routine activities theory. Routine activities theory is actually based on three criteria. For example, there is a motivated offender, there is a clear-cut target, and there is a absence of capable guardian. It talks about that no matter how conducive the environment is, how good the society is, where there's a equality prevails, there's a equal access to resources, but still there are people who are likely to commit crimes, and they are likely to victimize other people. So for the same reason, and they do it only when they know that there is no availability of capable guardians. Now, for example, there are, especially in urban areas where both parents are working, they don't give enough time to their children, and the children, they associate with such relatives or with such friends who motivate them to commit crimes, even though they may commit crimes only for sheer fun. For example, joyriding, where they pick up a car and they simply go for one ride and they drop the car just anywhere. So targets are more likely to be victimized if they are poorly guarded and exposed to a large group of motivated offenders, such as teenage boys. According to some victimologists, actually victims trigger criminal acts by their provocative behavior. They may instigate inside the offense by actively interacting with the offender, placing oneself at risk by going out to different places, interacting with young people or strangers, even getting drunk, and then being not at all conscious of the fact that they are in a different place with a different person whom they hardly know. Victimologists say that there are people who are motivated offenders. No matter how good the society is, they are still likely to commit crimes, because for the very blend and for the very nature of committing crime, that they will commit crime, they will indulge in crime. And even some victims, they may not actively participate, they might be passive precipitators, but offenders may perceive them to be a threat, and they are likely to take actions against them. The idea over here is to understand what are those situations in which victims are caught, and they do not understand the seriousness of such situation, they undermine such situation, and they are caught unconsciously and they are victimized. The idea is to understand what are those situational factors in which victims are likely to become a victim of a crime, and some offenders, even though they may not have an intention to commit crime, but they decide to commit crimes on the spur of the moment. So that is why it becomes very important to understand, to avoid those such situations. Victims can avoid such situations, such situational factors, which may help them not becoming a victim of crime and keeping themselves safe. Thank you.